I do have other shirts that I wear, but filming the same day means I also have to change many times, and I'm just too lazy right now. This is a reading vlog for October. I will have posted by this point my October TBR, which is a version of Blackoweenathon from 2022, and I have already read 2 books out of the 7 that I was planning to read because I was like, I need to hit the ground running. It's already the second week of October. I need to do something. So with that, I'm distracted by spider webs. Y'all, my place has too many spiders, and I'm so done with it. There's so many. I don't like spiders, but anyways, I talked about these 2 books at the end of my TBR video, but if you didn't catch it, both of these were 4 stars. I actually recommended them just in general if you want to have, 1, both of them are fast reads, 2, very engaging books, and 3, stories that are completed that don't make you feel like you're longing for more answers. They're great. The difference that I will say is that when no one is watching, I think you'll probably leave feeling very disheartened about the world because gentrification is very real. It's happening in many cities across the country, but this thriller is more scary because it is truly real. And the way that the conspiracy of what Sydney is trying to place together, whatever conspiracy theory she's got, isn't far off from what reality is. And I think that's what's really hard, but also the most scary part of the book is how real this is. When it comes to Memoirs of a Porcupine, this is more of just like a nonchalant romp. Like you're hanging out with your porcupine friend and he's like, guys, I got a crazy ass story that I need to tell you about. And you're like, definitely will listen to it. And that's what you're in for. So after having a book that is very much serious and about very serious and real things, this little book is kind of a nice break in what I'm going to be reading because I have some more contemporary fiction that's coming up / the classic fiction that will also be talking about all the isms in America. And so having a book that's a little bit more on the lighthearted side, even though it does talk about death and not in the grief-stricken way, in the way that like the character killed people way. So that's kind of the difference. This was a nice break before I jump into another book that becomes a little bit serious. Let's talk about that other book, shall we? I didn't bring the book over here, so I had to go grab it, but Necessary Fiction. So I saw this recommended on Bookshop. I saw it recommended on bookshop.org by the bookseller that I usually give my donation to, I guess you would call it. I forget how much the donation is through bookshop.org, but they were recommending this as recent release and queer fiction to read. So to give you more of the premise, it's an audacious and eye-opening novel of queer life in contemporary Nigeria. What makes a family, who gets to define it, is freedom for everyone. In Necessary Fiction, Osunde's characters search for answers to these provocative questions as they stake lives for themselves in one of the world's most dynamic cities, Lagos, Nigeria. Vibrantly active, brazenly flawed, and stubbornly themselves, they test the limits of their relationships with society, relatives, and one another as they pursue love, community, and happiness. As they navigate the worlds of art, music, creative commerce, and beyond, each of them reveals how they reckon with the necessary fiction they carry for survival. So I thought that all of that sounded really good, and I was just like, I'm gonna read that, and I want to read it now. So with that, I'm excited to read this book, and we'll see how quickly I get through it. There is an audiobook, and in the audiobook, there's quite a few narrators, and even at the beginning of this book, there is a character list, I think is what the author wrote it as. Hold on. Cast of characters. There's a list of them right here on the page. So my guess is that we have many POVs in this book, and if it's not many POVs, the audiobook at least gives voices to our main characters. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next clip when I'm either halfway through this book or I've completed it, because I've been reading these books very quickly, and it's nice to not feel like you're in a slump anymore. Okay, so here I am, back again with an update that's like 5 days late. It's fine. Life is lifing pretty hard, and I'm coming at you a little bit tired because I had a long evening yesterday. But I do have, finally, an update on Necessary Fiction, and it's a positive one, which is exciting. So, I am having a great time reading this book. I love the prose. I love how it's written. The reason why I love the writing so much is just because it's engaging and it makes the book feel more alive and the characters more alive. In each of the chapters that I have read so far, it feels like I'm actually reading from the character's perspective, and they seem very identifiable via different vocabulary usage or spelling. It just makes the book more engaging to read. The second thing that I've been loving about this book is how we are being introduced to characters and how much you just have to dive into the personalities and where they're at in life currently, and to see what they showcase to you, all their secrets, what they're holding against other people, what they're scared of, what they're grieving, what they're in love with. That's been a wonderful ride to be on with each of the characters. Again, this story is about the queer lives of people that are living in Lagos, Nigeria. It is about the queer community there. It is about the queer family that has been created with all of these characters that are being showcased, and what has harmed them in the past, what's currently being a trigger. Sometimes it can also be just family being difficult, blood family relatives. A lot of it that I've been currently reading, like the first half, though you get some current day information, a lot of it is backstory on each of these characters. And there's even a chapter that I believe they call the Truth Circle, if I remember correctly, where all of them as a family come and just say what's on their chest at the current moment. Either people can say something or not, but it's just supposed to be, let me get off this chest, and then we leave it here at the circle. There's just so many moments like that of love and care and familiarity that just feels like you're not being invasive to this family, but you feel like you're in the truth circle with them, and it just feels honest. That's the best way to describe this book, is that it's honest, and I love that. It's broken up into parts, not necessarily chapters, but within those parts there are sections that are what we would all consider chapters. Some of these chapters are consistent with the characters based on the part in the book, or it is a lot of characters all at once, back to back in different chapters with giving their stories and what they are going through. I'm at the part where it's called She, Her, They, Them. A lot of character stories are actually overlapping in this one, and I think I've met now 4 distinct characters. I think I just got to the 4th one. This section is really relatable to me as someone who is also non-binary and uses they, them. It's a lot of topics that I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. I understand this a lot. Already in this section, it's talked about asexuality, lesbianism, and gender. That's more than the first 2 parts where it was more sectioned on gay men. That's why I think this part I'm attaching to so personally. I will say in the second part, it focused a lot on grief, and overall, all of the stories have some sort of mental health concerns that people are going through or are avoiding. So this book has it all, really, really does. And it's proven to be a worthwhile read. And I'm so glad that I saw it randomly. And honestly, I'm pretty sure I know what rating I'm going to get this book, but I will do that update in the next one. Don't know when that will be because reading has been sporadic this week. I am back with an update, and that means I have finished Necessary Fiction by I don't know how to pronounce the author's first name, but Osunde is their last name, and I finished it last night because I couldn't put this book down once I started really getting into it, and it's a 5-star read, you guys. This is something that I think everyone should read. I think it's a great what's that called when everybody sits together in a circle and talks about the book? Book group. Yes, I think this is a really great book discussion. I also feel like everyone will get something from this story just because it's so character-centered. And even though there is barely any plot, I think the characters hold their own and make this reading just so fantastic and so smooth to enjoy. So, with that being said, what else can I tell you about this book without spoiling it? Because I feel like when it's a character-centered book, it's very hard to discuss an actual plot. As I've said earlier, the story is a queer found family that is located in Lagos, Nigeria, and how all of them are friends, how all of them found each other, and each one of their stories and how they ended up being somewhere in the queer universe. The backstories are really what is the main focal point in this book, and of course it also showcases what they're currently going through, what obstacles they still face, what obstacles they're still dealing with and trying to traverse with their newfound families, and it's just a joy to read. I guess to sum up this experience, it felt like you were reading someone's diary who allowed you for a moment to gain their experience, to read into their thoughts, to see all their secrets, and it feels like an honor to read their stories. If I could, I would reread this book and experience it all again. That's how lovely it was reading this. I will definitely be picking up more books by this author. I think they're a fantastic writer, and I'm so happy that I was pulled to try out this book without any influence other than a local bookstore saying, hey, maybe you should read this. So 5-star read. Everyone should read it. I hope more people in the next year do pick up this book. So with that being said, I want to just pause and reflect a little bit, because the last 3 books I've all had really great reading experiences with, and I just want to say this is awesome. I don't think I've had a reading month in a bit where just every book I pick up feels like a wonderful experience, whether it's terrifying, funny, or sad. It's been just a great experience to read from all these authors, and I definitely want to read more of their works, which is great. So I'm hoping that this trend continues with the next book. So this was just a general fiction book, and I wanted to go back into a little bit spookier setting. So I am now picking up this horror book. I'm pretty sure it's horror. When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. And this story is about a girl named Mira, and she has fled her small southern town because of some things that happened there that were very uncomfortable. And she is now headed back to that town because Celine is getting married, and she has to face some of past events in her life with one other person and Celine. I have also heard that this is about ghosts. So that's how I know it's not a thriller. Pretty sure this is a horror book, and I am excited to get scary, spooky, ghostly. I was going to say scary, spooky skeletons, because that's always the thing, but if it's ghosts, then I don't think there will be skeletons. I guess there could be dead bodies. This is going to take place on a plantation, so there's probably skeletons. So I will update you guys once I start officially reading this book. I still haven't picked it up yet. Well, I mean, I've picked it up, but I haven't started reading it yet. But until then, I will see you in the next clip. This is very strange. My AC is off for the first time because I realized in the last clip that it was very loud in the background, and even when I was like quiet for just like a couple seconds, I was like, oh, I can hear it. I feel like I can hear everything way too clearly now, but we're gonna just have to roll with it. I'm here with an update, and originally I thought I was going to be reading 100 pages of this new book, which is When the Reckoning Comes, and I finished this. I finished this book in one day. I went to work with this book, I listened to the entire audiobook, which is less than 9 hours long, and I finished this book. So before I get into my rating and everything, the plot, once again, is we're following our main character, Mira, who is from a small town in North Carolina, and she gets a phone call at work from an old friend, Celine, who is going to have a wedding, and she wants her to come to that wedding, which is going to be at a plantation that is in their small town. At first, Mira is a bit apprehensive about coming back, but then she says okay, and on her journey to the small town, she gets these memories, and in those memories, she's realizing what her friendship with Celine and Jesse were like when they were very young and what they experienced in this small town. I can hear every single goddamn thing on the street, and it's irritating me. Ooh, okay. I hate this. Anyways, there is an event that happens with Jesse and Mira where it's the reason Jesse has to leave school and where Mira decides I can't be in this small town anymore. And this event will come up for the wedding because this event happened at the plantation home, but the plantation home nowadays has a new visage. It's gotten an upgrade. It looks fantastic and people are coming to visit it, whereas in the time when they were children, it was decrepit, run down, and no one would go there due to a lot of ghost stories. So that's where the horror part of this book comes in. This book, I gave a 4.5. The reason why I did is because originally I was sitting at a 4, and then once we hit the part where we actually got to the plantation and Mira was giving her narration of how she felt about being on a plantation that clearly catered to tourists, and there was all very, very uncomfortable things happening on it. We then got more and more into the grips of the horror part. So I wanted to talk about this part a little bit more because originally I didn't think I was going to be scared of this book, and I never got the heebie-jeebies, but the horrific element of being on a plantation and having the ghosts tell you their story along with what currently is playing out at the wedding was quite horrific, and that part was very, very terrifying, and I think the author did a fantastic job in that regard. I, for the most part, really loved the story. I felt like it was paced very well. The audio narrator is also fantastic. I'd highly recommend the audio, clearly. I really enjoyed all the characters. Mira, being our main character, was great to have. She was curious enough when I was also curious, and also frightened at the same time when I was frightened, and so it felt like the narrator was reliable in that instance. When especially weird shit started to happen. I had no idea what was going to happen to our main character or any of the other people, but in the end, I gave it a 4.5 because overall I really enjoyed the story. But when it comes to horror books and thriller books, I think if the ending feels a little bit too open-ended, I can't give it a 5. And there's not a definitive answer to what happens next to the characters that survive the night. Some of them have a definitive end, but not all of them. And I don't know what the final outcome will be. There is some understanding that like the police will get involved or someone will figure it out and it will be blamed all on these people and not the characters we were with. But there's not like finality with that. And that's where I'm a little bit like, I wish we got a little bit more glimpse into the aftermath. The ending we did get, I still was satisfied with. So I would highly recommend this book. We gotta get people to stop honking on the street, I swear to God. My final thoughts are, if you like horror, I think you should pick up this book. So I have 3 books left, and originally I was going to do Their Eyes Are Watching God next, and then I realized how much shorter it was. This book I didn't actually realize, The Reckoning, I didn't realize was 230-something pages. I was like, oh my God, shorter than I thought. I thought it was like 250. And Their Eyes Are Watching God is 219, and I was like, you know what? I should now read the most pages I have left book, and then go all the way down to the novella, because I feel like at the end of the month, I may not want to be reading a heavy page book. So I am going to start reading Listen to Your Sister, and this is the other thriller book that I picked up, and it's also published this year. That was the prompt for this book. I'm excited and a little apprehensive because the only Cabin in the Woods story I know is an old film that I think is from like the 1970s that at one point in my life I saw, and I don't want to ever experience that horror again. I'll try to figure out what movie it is. But yeah, I don't, there's a scene in there that do I really want to tell you guys what it is though? It's weird. But we'll see what their sister has been trying to tell them and these boys have not been listening to. That's kind of more, I'm very interested in the dynamics of these characters in this story rather than what the horror element specifically is. So with that being said, hopefully the next clip is not me finishing this book again and I actually give you an update in the middle. Because, you know, that makes a vlog maybe a little bit more interesting. Okay, we're here today to finally talk about Listen to Your Sister. So we're going to talk about Listen to Your Sister, which is the book I am currently reading, and I have surpassed 100 pages. I'm at like 250 out of 340 pages in this book. I did the thing where I listened to audio again, and then I just kind of cruised. So I do have some thoughts, though, and they're not as great as I would like them to be. The book started off with the plot of introducing us to the 3 main characters of the story, which all of them are siblings, and then each chapter is then a perspective of one of the siblings, depending on who's in the more immediate line of thinking for the plot at the current time. And that's fine, very used to that. However, I was having trouble as to figuring out why I wasn't falling in love with any of the characters or just engaging in the story fully, because usually when I give a book a 3, it's not that there's anything wrong with the book, but I didn't like the plot or the characters weren't very strong for me, but I did enjoy what I did enjoy overall. Like, it wasn't terrible. And I think I nailed down what the problem is, and that is the book felt like it wanted to get to the cabin as quickly as possible, where all the horrific stuff would escalate and eventually get out of control. But it did it so quickly, personally for me, that there wasn't like this slow, steady storytelling of the horror that was going to happen. It was like a little sprinkle the first day we were in the story, and then the second day was like a river, a gushing river with a waterfall, and it hadn't stopped since. Like, since I think it's like page 80 or something like that, it just feels like the story just kept going and can't get off the rails, basically. I think I prefer horror and thrillers that have a little bit more of a steady increase into the horrific thing or the scary element versus just gunning it. I'm close to finishing this book now, and I am going to finish it because I am interested to see the answer for this horror, why it manifested the way it did, and how it will affect the siblings into present day. It is current day right now, but I guess I mean the future in the book. I'm just hoping that the book rounds itself back up to a 3 for me, because I just feel bad that it's not clicking with me, but it's really not clicking. Hopefully tomorrow I will have an update for you guys, but for now, that's where I'm at. I just filmed some TikToks for the very first time. That was exhausting, and I don't even know if I'm going to post them at this point. This is a reading vlog though, and I am going to update you on the fact that I finished Listen to Your Sister, which I finished yesterday. I feel bad because this is the first book for this author to be published, and I don't think the writing was bad. I just don't think this plot was for me. I was not as engaged in the story as I thought I would be. I thought the sibling dynamics I would be more invested in than I was. I thought I was more invested in also answering the question of why this horror was happening. And when we got the answer at the end of the book, it felt satisfying, but it didn't give me the attachment that I wanted to this book or this plot. I felt like the characters were fully developed. I felt like the characters definitely held their own in whatever capacity the arguments were happening in, whether the siblings were getting along in one moment and upset in the next. It did feel very, not chaotic, but tumultuous. It felt very tumultuous with all of them, and I think that's the greatest way to explain this book. I just felt like the pacing was off, and that's what was throwing me off, and that's what really sunk my enjoyment for this book. I think this book is for people who want to have a strong but quick horror story, if that makes sense. It's not a slow burn. It doesn't quietly creep on you. It just says, here's a few chapters, and then bam, we're in it and we're gunning for it the entire time. And that's what some people want in their horror, and I'm finding that I might like the slower version of horror. When I think back to when I was reading When No One Is Watching at the beginning of this month, I find myself reflecting on how nice that slow pace was and how thrilling it became, and then also horrific on top of that. Whereas with this one, it was just so quick and so fast, I didn't feel like I could settle with the characters before everything started to collide. I'm not getting into the ending too much because I don't want to spoil it, especially since this is a new book. What I'll say is it feels very much like a horror movie at the end. I think that's the best way I could say it, where the ending is still a little bit open, but still somewhat sweet. Yeah, I think what I kind of wanted more of was the brothers, and if they had like horror stuff happening to them, like if they had something similar to their sister's version of terror and nightmares. I think that would have made the story a little bit more dynamic or just a little bit more in depth. But I think the point is that all three of the characters dealt with trauma in their own ways, and it was obvious, or at least to me when I started reading the book and the characters were starting to showcase themselves, that the brothers had their own ways of dealing with it, and their sister was definitely just compartmentalizing everything that had happened to them at a very young age. So when the rest of the book kind of explains all of that and just tells the story of these siblings, I think that was nicely done, but I just wish we had more time. It felt like this was really rushed. So anyways, those are my final thoughts. I gave it a 2.5. I still feel bad about it, but it just wasn't my kind of horror. But maybe it'll be your kind of horror. I hope it is. People don't agree with me, by the way. There's quite a number of people that enjoyed this book. So the next book I am picking up is Their Eyes Were Watching God. I am excited to read this book. This is, of course, a classic in American literature, and I've only heard people give compliments to this book. I've never heard anyone talk ill of this book. I'm excited to dive into this book. I haven't started it yet, but hopefully today I will, and I will update you guys once I've read a good chunk. I don't know if I will update you guys like by 50 pages or like halfway through, so we'll see. So I finally have read 50 pages in Their Eyes Were Watching God, and I have just a tiny update, and it is that it's taking me a bit longer to read through this book because of the dialogue. It is written in a way where everything has apostrophes because that's the way, I don't know if it's phonetically, but it's a certain way to write Southern twang and the way people speak in the South during this time. It was very similar in Grapes of Wrath when I read it way back in high school. So it's just something to get used to, and it slows me down a little bit because it's not what I'm used to reading in dialogue. But that doesn't deter me from the story at all. Right now, the plot is pretty simple. It is Janie speaking to another woman about her life story because the other woman says, well, some people say some things. And Janie's like, well, like, how about you come into my house after you've given me this really good meal and I'll actually tell you my story. So far, Janie is already on her second marriage, 50 pages in, which I was really surprised with. That was the one thing I was like, you are 17 years old and you are already on your second marriage. Okay, cool. That was a whirlwind of a year that didn't really matter. But that's also kind of what I like about the writing here is for the first marriage, it was roughly a year long. There was a wedding, but we didn't get any wedding details other than a couple of things mentioned, but like there wasn't a whole scene based on that wedding. We just got to the point where they were at the end of their marriage and the reason why Janie left in the first place. And then the second marriage has a lot more going on, and I think the second marriage may be the one where the most amount of the story happens, as her second husband is now a mayor of a small black town that is being created somewhere in northern Florida. So that's where we're at. Hopefully the next time I see you guys, I will be done with the book. So I just finished Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Hurston, and I have thoughts. So let me talk about the plot a little bit. This book follows Janie Crawford as she navigates her life and how she was raised, to her first husband, then to her second husband, and then to her third husband, while she speaks to a friend telling her this story. At the heart of the story, it's about a Black American woman finding herself, finding her interests, finding the people who love her for who she is, rather than fitting into what society wants from her. The edition that I have has a few essays in it. There's a foreword written by someone, and then there's two essays in the back. One is specifically more about a general biography on Zora, and then there is a timeline, and then there's another essay specifically about the book. What I can say after reading the essays and looking a bit more online, just reading more thoughts from other people, there was a lot of these things that if I was in a reading group, if I was in a lecture, if it was school, you know, we would have gotten all into this, and I think I would have gotten more out of this book if I had read it in a group versus just being on my own and then figuring all this out. Historically, I understand why this is a profound book, but for my reading enjoyment, it just wasn't right. And I don't know if it was in the headspace that I was in, but I hope when I read her again, I have a better time, and I think I will. To let all of you guys know, we are now 2.5 days away from the 31st of October, or maybe it's just 2 days at this point, and I still have one book left, which is Ring Shout, and I will be reading this. This is the smallest of all the books I got, I believe, even compared to Memoirs of a Porcupine. I think this is shorter than that one, though I could be lying. I haven't had that book in a minute. I'm excited to jump into this. I'm going to start reading it this evening. Again, this book is centered around that the KKK is actually demons, and a group of friends are going to go demon hunting. That's at least my understanding of this book. So the next time I talk about this book will probably be when I finish it. So I will see you guys then. Oh, I should probably point out this. Yes, I got shelves for the wall, and that's where these books are. So now I have empty spaces for new books. Very excited. Spooky season has officially ended, but this vlog hasn't. Forewarning, there's people across the street that are doing yard work, and they're still here after 3 hours. I don't know what they're doing that needs to be so specifically using a blade to do something, but if you hear that, that's what it is. So I'm here now to give you my review of Ring Shout by P. Djèlí Clark. This was such a fun ride, and I hope there are so many more books in this series, in this world. I'm so happy to finish out this month with a book that I really, really enjoyed. Just up front, this was a 4.5 stars for me. The reason why it's 4.5 stars is because I wish this book was longer. What was perfectly executed in this book was we established our characters right away. It was 3 women at the beginning who were investigating and trying to bring in some Kluxes, right? Ku Kluxes? They're trying to coax them in, and we get their perspectives, what they used to fight, what they're good at within the first chapter, and at the same time we get to learn a lot of lore. Throughout this entire journey, even though it is short and sweet and to the point, the story has a perfect amount of building characters, having them win and fail, enough lore, enough history of the places that we're seeing, and we're trying to understand what they already know as fighters, and the climax to the story feels very real, vindicated, and it leaves the reader wanting more. Specifically me. I am that reader. Reading this book really reminds me of reading The Sword of Kaigen for the first time, where I was so excited about the world and then realizing there's no other books. Where can I continue to follow these stories and these people? I want more, please. And this one, I haven't looked up at all whether or not Clark is going to be writing more in this world, but I really, really, really hope he does. So yes, if you have not read this book already and you love horror and you love fantasy, I highly, highly recommend it. So upon reflection of this month and reading 7 books for the first time in a month in I don't know how many years, I got exhausted by the end. I did. And I think you can see it throughout my filming when that happened. So I don't know if I will do a full month of vlogging again, but there will be a vlog for next month for a certain duology that I'm very, very excited to read and get my hands on. I don't know what my average rating is at the moment, but I think it's actually very high between all 7 of these books. I'll put it on the screen so we all can know what my average was, but I feel like overall I had a good month. I definitely found a 5-star that I love and I will not shut up about, and also found another horror book that I love. Both of the novellas actually I really, really enjoyed. But that is it for the end of this vlog. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.